I mentioned at the end of the previous video that there would be two more videos, but actually there's just this one on VTP because the first bit of information I want to tell you about the versions, it's very short. Now, according to Cisco's own website documentation, VTP version 3 is friendly to version 2, but simply will not work with version 1. If a switch running version 1 detects a version 3 switch, the switch running version 1 is going to attempt to upgrade itself to version 2. Naturally, if the switch can only run version 1, you're stuck. There's one more big difference between the versions I want to mention. Versions 1 and 2 support only VLANs 1 through 1005, where version 3 supports the full range of extended VLANs 1 through 4094. Now, Cisco's recommendations I have for you here on the board go along with some real-world recommendations I want to give you and Cisco kind of hints at. This version 1 upgrading itself to version 2 doesn't always happen, doesn't always work correctly. Versions 2 and 3 don't always play together nicely. Theoretically, we should be okay, but that doesn't always happen. The reason I mention this is not only to give you a little bit of real-world info, but I also want to really hammer home, as Cisco does, you are so much better off if you have what Cisco likes to call a homogeneous environment. They're all your switches are version 3, and if you have current switches that aren't version 3 and you can't replace them, before you introduce version 3, you really want to make sure that your current switches are at least version 2 capable, because versions 1 and 3, forget it. You're not going to really get anything done. But you are so much better off if your current switches are version 3 capable. It's going to save you a lot of work. Because there will always be a little bit of mystery troubleshooting in there when versions 2 and 3 are involved. At least that is my experience. Now, something else that's going to save us a lot of work, and is a lot more straightforward, is VTP pruning. And the reason we need pruning is because our trunk ports are members of all our VLANs. And that leads to an issue itself involving broadcasts, unknown unicasts, and multicasts. And that's a lot of our traffic. So we better know what's going on here with pruning. Now, a trunk port is going to forward broadcasts and multicasts for all the VLANs it knows about, regardless of whether the switch at the other end of the trunk actually has ports in those VLANs. And this means that most likely our sending switch is sending totally unnecessary traffic and the recipient is receiving totally unnecessary traffic. And we know there's overhead involved with each. Plus, of course, we would be using up some of our bandwidth here between our switches that we don't need to use. Now, in this example, switch 1 has hosts in VLANs 2 through 19. That switch is trunking with switch 2, which has hosts only in VLANs 2 through 10. That means switch 2 is receiving broadcasts and multicasts from switch 1 that it doesn't need. It doesn't need that traffic for VLANs 11 through 19, because switch 2 is going to get them and say, yeah, I don't need that, throwing it away. So it's a lot of work for nothing and sucking up bandwidth for nothing. There's no reason to send broadcast or multicast traffic belonging to VLANs 11 through 19 to switch 2, nor is there a reason to flood unknown unicast frames belonging to those VLANs to switch 2. There's no reason for it. Now, with VTP pruning, what a switch does, it sends a message to its trunking partners identifying the VLANs in use by the sending switch. So here, switch 2 would say, hey, I got ports in VLANs 2 through 10, that's it. Don't send me anything else with any of the other non-default VLANs, because the reason I didn't list, and it also knows about 1 and 1002 through 1005, is that you can't prune those VLANs. You can only prune the non-default ones. Now, the switch, receiving that message, in this case, switch 1, is going to keep that information, and that's how that switch knows which broadcast / multicast / unknown unicast should be forwarded to the other switch, which ones to send. And really, just as importantly, that switch knows which broadcasts and multicasts and unknown unicasts not to forward to the other switch. Because with pruning in operation, say switch 1 has a broadcast that's sending out all ports in VLAN 14. Well, by default, that would include the trunk port, because trunk port's a member of all VLANs. But pruning has let switch 2 let switch 1 know in advance, hey, I don't have any ports in VLAN 14, only 2 through 10, so don't send me anything with any of the other non-default VLANs. So switch 1 wouldn't send that broadcast. That's pretty easy, and even easier is enabling it. And as we'll see, I believe we're only going to have to enable it on one switch in our VTP domain. You know, I'm not lazy in either of you, but every once in a while it's just nice to see a short command that has no options. It's kind of sweet. We get a little confirm. Pruning has been switched on. And by the time I get over to the other switch, I bet it's already turned on here. Yep, VTP pruning mode enabled. Same way it learned about CCNP. It got an advertisement that says, hey, now I've got pruning enabled. And switch 2 says, okay, I'll join that party. Now, that simple little command makes VLANs 2 through 1001 eligible for pruning. You can't prune the default VLANs, as I mentioned. If for some reason you need to make some of those VLANs prune-proof, you just use the switchport trunk pruning VLAN command. And what you're doing there is editing the list of VLANs eligible for pruning. This is not to be confused with the similar command we used earlier where we were filtering VLANs, saying this VLAN can't send traffic across the link. The command, again, is switchport trunk pruning VLAN. I'm not going to go through a lab with that because the logic is really the same as it was with the other one. You have the options to put a list of them in there, or you could put add, accept, none, remove, and then just follow that with the VLANs you want to remove from the list. It's just that simple. It's the exact same logic. And by golly, that wraps it up. VTP, like I said, simple. You use it in production networks, turn on pruning, and it just works beautifully. But there are a lot of details, which we've gone over in this section, that are important for your NP switch study, and that just might come up in advanced studies and advanced networking as well. Next up is a topic that will be all over your exam and all over your networks, no matter where you work, and that's the spanning tree protocol. We're going to start with the fundamentals of STP in the very next section. I'll see you there.